and then record audio offline. And Val, if you could just say your first and last name for me, or like whatever you go by.
I I am Valeria Curry.
Thank you. That's just like a sound check. um, all right. So we're gonna get started here in 5, 4, 3. Welcome back to Ward of the State, y'all. I'm so excited. It's been a while. It's been really hard to get people to come and share their stories because these stories are so amazing. And I hope you guys have all really loved and enjoyed every episode that we've had so far. Some of my favorites have been Jessica's. She was really one of my favorites. And then also last week we had, what was his name? Isaac. Isaac's story was amazing. And I just see him. He's now on TikTok doing big things. We were talking about that if you didn't listen to last week's episode. Or I say last week, it's been like 4 weeks, y'all, but the last episode. Isaac's story was amazing, and what he's doing in the foster care system and the adoption system and his foundation is fantastic. So if you haven't had the chance to go listen to it, please go listen to it. Also follow him, Isaac Eder. I believe it's on TikTok. He's trying to grow his TikTok, and he's new to the TikTok foster care and adoption community. So definitely check that out. But this week, I have another foster youth, Ward of the State. Their situation is very unique, and I'm very excited to get to learn more about them. And that's Val. Val, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So Val, so you when you reached out, um you said that you really weren't sure of like, am I a foster kid? Am I not a foster kid? I know I was a ward of the state. And that was because you were in group homes and like closed, open and closed facilities. So it kind of explained that, like, why do you not feel like you weren't in a traditional foster home, which I've never heard before. I've
Yeah,
never heard someone just
it's
staying in in a facility. Also, Wedgwood, I've been to Wedgwood. I wasn't there, but my brothers were there. So I
oh,
visited them at Wedgwood. So I've been, this
yeah.
is another reason why I wanted
I,
to talk to you, because I'm like, I've been to that place when I was a
yeah,
kid. So
Wedgwood is a very
it's a
interesting
prison. It's a prison.
it
It's
really
a
is. And
prison.
they like when people ask me to describe it and I'm like, okay, think of like a psych ward, but think of also juvie. It's like a mix between the two because they'll give you meds. They don't give you great therapy, but they'll give you all the meds and every door will lock behind you.
Yep.
Uh, they, we and we don't really think of that. But yeah, I was taken as a ward of the state when I was 16. I did try for emancipation, but my guardian at Leadham said absolutely not. Even though I had been paying bills for a couple of years, it still didn't make sense to me. But
Mm.
and at first, I was placed in St. John's Home where they were looking for a foster home for me, and nobody really wanted to take a 16-year-old because it's very hard to place teenagers, especially teens with trauma,
Hmm.
and um, especially teens that I was known to, leave. I was known to run away when things got very strict on me. Um, Partially because everyone always treated you like you were a bad kid. They
Hmm.
treated you like you were being punished. And it's like, I'm not the person being punished. Like, there's no reason for me to be punished here. They would have like 7 or 8 o'clock bedtimes for a 16-year-old and
And this
just
is at
like keep you in
Wedgwood,
your. This was at St. John's Home when I
St.
first
John's.
arrived.
Okay.
And so I left there, and when they picked me back up, they sent me to Wedgwood. Um,
Mm.
And in the time that I was at Wedgwood, my mom was able to regain custody. And I think part of it was the state not wanting to have to pay benefits. As I had talked to my caseworker about the potential of me aging out, and then suddenly they're sending me home. So
So
I'm like,
you were reunified the last
I would
minute.
I was reunified very closely to being aged out.
That's shady. That's
It
shady.
was because I'm like, my mom was not like, I was in state custody because my mom was severely mentally ill. And my mom wasn't like a whole lot better. I mean, she did the parenting classes. We had home visits and overnight visits, but my mom she still had suicide attempts while I was in state care.
Mm.
And part of the whole reason why they took me was because she would have frequent suicide attempts at home. I would see them and have to help clean them up. And my mom would be in the mental ward for months at a time with us without supervision.
So where were you at when she was receiving care?
We were just at home,
They didn't.
left I mean, and that started at 13. And it was really interesting. I'm 32 now.
Hmm.
And I've just started opening up to my partner about my story because it's not something that I like to share with people. Some people get really judgmental, like about being a former foster youth, even though there's nothing wrong. Like the child in this situation did not do anything, but they always seem to judge former foster youth.
Mm.
And he brought up a great point of like, why didn't your grandparents take custody of you?
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's actually a really excellent point. Why didn't my grandparents?
And did you ever
Because they,
ask them?
unfortunately, no, they're both deceased by now when he finally asked that question, but they knew exactly what was going on with my mom because my mom did not have her medical legal guardianship. My grandpa had legal guardianship over her. They
Hmm.
would just occasionally come by and drop off food, but for the most part, I would have to, make money to get food, keep electricity and heat on in the house
And you were a
from
teenager at
13
this
to,
time.
yes.
And, that's a lot similar to my story. If you've read my book or if you know anything about my story, my mom was a drug dealer and she left us at home for months and weeks at a time. And she would stop by, and our uncles and aunts would stop by and drop off food, but that would only kids don't really know how to regulate food or
Kids,
ration food. So we
yeah,
ran
kids can't
out and we would have to go and collect like pop bottles to get money or just like rob the grocery store. Because that's a
we did the
Michigan
pop
thing. That's
bottle.
a Michigan thing, y'all. That's a
It
Michigan
is,
thing.
it is. We
You can
did the
tell you them
pop
pop
bottle
bottles 10
collection.
cents a can.
We actually had T-shirts from various schools in the area, so we would go to their neighborhoods and collect pop bottles, and
Hmm.
because they're more likely to donate if it's for like an after-school activity, like we'd be in French club or something, and really it would be, hey, I need to keep the heat on because it's winter, so I'm going to go door to
Hmm.
door collecting pop bottles.
Wow.
Um, and like, I mean, I there's still a lot of questions with my grandparents of my mom had electroconvulsive therapy when I was about 14. So
And what's
that's
that?
it is a shock therapy for the brain. They used to use it in institutions very frequently, but now it's very rarely
Like
used.
what you see on TV, would they be
Um,
like shocking their brain? That's
yes, yes.
horrible.
And that like I can't even watch it anymore. And for some reason the hospital sent her home the day after she first had it. And my grandparents didn't like come over to help with her or like take us all to their house. So I had to stay home for about a month and a half. I failed all of my classes because they had a 10 absences and you automatically fail policy. And I had to be a full-time caregiver for my mom at 14. So it's like I understand why the state finally did at six, when I say, this is neglect. But I'm also like, well, you should have taken me a long time ago. If we're gonna like, I've had to clean up blood from my house. I've had to clean up tissue from my house, and it was all of my mom's because my mom would severely self mutilate, and it's like, you, my grandparents should have stepped in before and taken us from there. The
Or
system
even
should
the
have.
state, like the state
The
should
state
have.
should have
If she's
before that.
being, if she's in a
Not
hospital or medical place institution, why is there no social worker who works there who's asking about her children?
apparently not. And it took years for them to even come and do one visit. And that was only after and like my school knew the situation. The school didn't call CPS. Like everybody failed on every single level. Like we had a cop at my school. He knew the entire situation because the cops were frequently at our house, with the fire department and everything to take my mom to the hospital. So he knew our entire nobody for
Mm.
years. And so by the time that they did finally take me, I'm like, look, I've been living grown for a long time. Like I've been paying, I haven't been paying the mortgage because I was a kid and didn't realize we needed to pay the mortgage, but I've been paying all the bills to keep all the utilities on because I made that mistake once when I was 14 and the heat got turned off in winter. But I've been keeping us fed, like,
And that's a lot for a child to take on. My sister did the
yeah.
same thing, and I she had a lot of problems before her death. And I just I just felt like she didn't get a childhood, and that's one thing that really upset me was just like she died young. She died when she was 30, and she didn't even get a childhood. And her
Sorry.
childhood she did had was like taking care of us, like, and making sure that we were fed and warm, and the heat was on, and that's just really unfair to
It
older siblings
is.
like y'all.
Well, and I'm the youngest sibling.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. My oldest sibling was moved out. At that time, she was already over 18, and I understand
So why didn't
why
she help, or like have has that
she
just?
she had a baby. She was barely
Mm,
making it on her own. Like she would try to come over and like bring us food sometimes too.
mhm.
So I do understand her position.
And when you
And
say us, you're the youngest, were there
I
other
had
people?
one other sibling that's a year older than me.
Uh-huh.
And she took to coping very hard. So like we all started drinking at a younger age to deal with it. What can you expect? But my one sister, we'll just call her A, she would drink very frequently. So she was like not able to take care of stuff.
Mm.
And it's like I can't really blame any of you, any of us, because you all were also traumatized children in the
Yep.
situation.
And you shouldn't be
Like
yeah, you shouldn't be
it shouldn't be
responsible.
happening to any of us.
Exactly. So let's talk about Wedgwood.
Okay.
How do you go from St. John's to Wedgwood? We know that you said you left St. John's and then you
I
went to Wedgwood. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier on the show, but can you let the listeners know like what is Wedgwood? Because I know exactly what it is.
yes.
But can you just give a description of like your first day, or like it's just a day in a life there?
So it is a closed residential treatment facility where they have multiple wards. And they'll usually have, I think it was between 12 and 16 kids on any ward at any given time. And literally everything locks behind you. So when you leave your room in the morning, that door locks and you have to get staff members to come and open your bedroom door. You cannot leave your bedroom door until they open up the common area because the hallway doors are locked. You can't go to the bathroom without staff opening up the bathroom door. You have one common area.
Do you have a bathroom in your room?
No, you only
So what
have
if you
one
have to pee in the middle
one
of the
bathroom.
night?
You got to tell staff you got one bathroom per hallway, and there's generally on my ward there was two hallways that had about 6 or 8 bedrooms in it, and like your bedroom just had a desk that was bolted down, a bed that was bolted down, and um, you did not have a clothing rack to hang up clothing because they would not keep bars in the room. You only had folded cubbies for all of your clothes, and the windows had grates covering them. So you can't even open up your bedroom window. You can't get a clear view outside. It has metal grating covering it to prevent kids from getting out. And if you needed a glass of water to drink, you could not get it in the middle of the night. The drinking fountain was in the common area. I
Mm.
remember there was one time when I was asking them to open up the bathroom door in the other, because they had the two hallways, and then they have the office where the staff is. And then in front of it is the common area where you have your living room, your dining room, and your kitchen. Um, One of the other girls was having an asthma attack, and was trying to ask for water, but she couldn't speak. She's just coughing. And they refused to open up the hallway doors. So she just tries to walk through the office and the staff restrain her or getting water. Like everything is locked down. The school is also only on the facility. So you go to school in a different hallway.
Wait, the school, so
and it's labeled on your transcripts just as Kentwood Public Schools. The school is inside. It is literally like juvie.
It's prison. Like, do you go outside?
Like,
I haven't heard going outside yet.
You can go outside if your level is high enough, because they grade your behavior from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Your behavior is graded. In school, your behavior is graded. On the unit, your behavior is graded, and you start out at level 1 and you have to earn privileges. The highest level you can get is level 4, but it is extremely rare and hard to get level 4.
I just wanted to repeat, your behavior is graded.
Your behavior and your attitude is graded on a scale between typically 1 and 3, and occasionally they'll give you a 4. I had a staff member threaten to drop my level because I was supposed to go on a home visit. It wasn't an overnight one, it was just a day visit. And my sister had called to let me know that my mom had tried to kill herself again and was in the hospital. And I started crying on the phone, which is a normal response. Like, what would you do if someone you love is trying to end their life? You're gonna cry about it. And they dropped my level for it because I was crying in public and disturbing the community. But I was just on the phone. And it was literally an involuntary reaction. You're going to cry about it. So I ended up losing my home visits anyway because they dropped level. And that's where it's like, it's literally is, you are punishing children. And it's like, I didn't do probably the prop bottle thing was illegal, but whatever.
Hey,
but it's like,
it's just a hustle.
I'm not in jail, right? Like I didn't go through the court system of this. It's literally my mom lost custody of me. And now I'm being punished for showing emotions at something that is emotional.
I mean, I'm still stuck on rating the behavior, to be honest.
They did it for everything. I have never been the most like, I'm gonna follow the rules stringently. There were times that, like, one of the youngest girls that we had on the unit was 11, and this was her first Christmas on the unit. So she was struggling really, really hard. And I had already had facial piercings at that time because
they allowed you to keep them inside. They didn't make you take them out?
They did not. They made me take them out. They had been in my face for long enough that they were still open. So I went up to the Chris, like, she's starting to cry and like throw a fit, which is an understandable response. She's a traumatized child, and this is literally her first time like not being in a home setting. So I go over to the Christmas tree and I take some ornaments off, put it in my piercings, and I pop around and I'm like, look, I'm a Christmas tree, which just makes her laugh. It breaks up her being that upset. It makes her laugh for a minute. It helps calm her down. I end up getting my level dropped, but that one was worth it. I'm like,
she said that one was worth it.
That one was worth it. They dropped me from level 3 to level 2 for that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care.
So what level did you have to be to go outside, and like what were the outside privileges?
So you could be, I think it was level 3 to be able to go to the store. And so they would go as a group. You'd be able to go to the store when they would just like go to Target or something. And
Okay.
if you had money, you could buy something, but they also exploited your labor. So if you were in the work program, you only made like less than $2 an hour.
Wait, a work program?
A work program. Yes, they called it an employee training program.
And what did you
Of we're
do on
gonna help you
this
do
training? This is just
so
getting worse and worse.
I know they had 3 different things that you could do. They had the car washing, they had the
The call. Wait,
landscaping, and they had housekeeping.
wait,
And that, yep, and
wait.
that's what they're training you for. And I'm like, I don't. And
Not the training program. What if they're like, you gonna be a detailer? Like,
yeah, and the thing is that most of the profit, because I ended up in landscaping because that's where they needed people.
mhm.
And they literally had us go to people's houses and to other
So wait,
businesses.
okay.
It
So you
wasn't
got paid
even
how much an
doing it.
hour?
I
This
got
is
paid
this
less
is
than
forced
$2.
labor.
It is. It is. It,
And
it
what
really,
happened to the
really
rest? And then
is.
were they charging $2 an hour to the people?
They were not charging $2 an hour to people. Of course they were not. They were taking a lot more than that. But
Oh
they would give
my
you that little bit of money
goodness.
and be like, you got a paycheck and you can put this on your resume. It never once helped me get a job. Never once.
No. Why would it help you get a job? What do
Because
you do? Like washing
yeah, it's
cars?
and it's like, and you can't, and they tell you, okay, don't put Wedgwood's name on it, put Kentwood Public Schools. And it's like anybody who looks it up, it's gonna be like, okay, that's a school system, but what school?
Exactly. Like what school? You can't just
What
say the
school
school's
are you
like
doing this to go? And yep, they had a nice little trainee program, which was
that is crazy. So, all right. So you're at Wedgwood. How long were you there?
I was there for a total of 9 months, I believe. I was
Okay.
at I was at St. John's Home for a little bit longer before then, but they were taking too long to not treat me like an 8-year-old.
I mean,
I'm like, I don't need it.
they do be treating people like they were like, especially like kids, because I feel like kids like us, we grow up a lot faster because we had to in our
Yeah,
situations. So like they really need to understand that. So
exactly.
when you were reunified, did they reunify all of your siblings or your older sibling? Were they already aged out at that point? I guess,
I
huh?
was the only sibling that was taken into state custody. They decided with my sister, A, that because she was so close to being 18, that it
Mm,
technically, like, she was months away. So they're
okay.
like, no, she's fine. And then my sister M was already an adult. She was already not in care. She was already on her own, pregnant, working out through things. So they, with me, because I had just freshly turned 16,
Hmm.
and I tried to argue that I should be emancipated. So I was like, well, if it's only a matter of, my mom messing up, then I should be emancipated. I've already been paying bills, you know, I already am doing all this stuff. And it is not that, like, when people are like, oh, just get emancipated, it is not that
It's not,
easy.
especially from the. I hate that, especially on my TikTok. Everyone's like, "Well, you could have just emancipated yourself." I'm like, "It's first of all, it's not that easy. Even though I had a job, even though I had all
Yep.
of everything, it's not that easy." And then, second of all, especially if you are in the state's care, the state don't
The
want
state
to
doesn't want to do.
emancipate because when you really think about emancipation, you're just becoming your own guardian, but the state would still have to now pay you if you were still in the system, they would have to pay
Yep.
you your monthly stipend so you could take care of yourself because you're your own guardian. They aren't doing
They
that.
they don't want to do that. They do
They're not
not
doing
want to do
that.
that.
They're gonna look at you like you're crazy.
Yep.
But while we're here, we're gonna take a quick short break, y'all. While we're gone, actually, I lost my train of thought. Let me reset. I be doing that sometimes. While we're here, we're going to take a quick short break. When we come back, we're going to talk. I was trying to remember what name I was going by. Let me reset again. While we're here, y'all, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get to know more about Val. where she is now. First of all, I didn't even do this in the beginning of the show. What are your pronouns? Oh my God, I totally forgot.
Uh, Generally she, her, but sometimes they, them. It really
I usually ask right at the beginning of the show, and I forgot. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
So we're gonna ask them where they are in life now. How did you got here, and what advice do you have someone who's stuck in a prison at like 13? Because you know, it, it was it was the rating the behavior and the work study for me.
There is a lot that goes into that place.
We'll be right back, y'all. All right. So I really don't really take a break. If you want to take a break right now and get some water, you can.
There is one more thing that I wanted to touch on with Wedgwood.
Okay.
Because they did something absolutely horrific. Like absolutely horrific. One of the people that was one of my good friends in there.
Mm-hmm.
She was on a suicide watch, and they were supposed to keep an eye on her every 15 minutes, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was level 4. I had 1 hour privileges off grounds without staff for an hour a day. I come back and I see cop car, fire truck, ambulance, and I usually know what that means. I've lived that experience with my mom way too much. I know what that means. She had hung herself in the bathroom, and she didn't make it. She had left me her diary with a note in it. They took that from me. They never gave it back to me. They took the drawing that she made for me. I only got that back because after I got reunified with my mom, a staff member sent it to me through the mail.
No. Okay. So do you want to share that? Do you want to share this story? Because we're technically
Yeah.
still on break. All
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
And like it's I hate Wedgwood. I can't even drive past there. I moved from Grand Rapids to get away from that area. Like I was like, nope.
Let me reintroduce the show, and then if you would like to share that, you totally can. All right, y'all, we're back. Please, please, please make sure that you're leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you're subscribing and following us on Spotify. I'm getting a Instagram something ready for the show. So you can guys have more content. If you want to see the video versions of the podcast, I put them up on my Patreon. Make sure you're following my Patreon at Carlos Dillard. And then also on my website, there's a link for you to donate for the show. You know, this is time consuming. People are sharing their stories. And a lot of foster parents, y'all are here listening and y'all are here learning, and you really need to start contributing. So we have a GoFundMe set up for the War to the State podcast. You can just look up GoFundMe and War to the State podcast, or you can donate directly on the donation link on my website. I do appreciate you all listening, but we need some more support. I'll be honest, we need some more support. So let's get it done. Especially it's Christmas time. Let's share the love. So Val, Wedgwood.
Yes. I mean, it's the outdoor time, the no outdoor time, the rating behavior and attitude, and the labor exploitation is terrible. But I like the most heinous thing that I experienced when I was there. I had one of my good friends I met on the ward, but we're all kids, we bond. It is trauma bonding with other kids, but you meet some kids in the system, and you grow really close to them very fast through a shared experience. She was on suicide watch, and they were supposed to be monitoring her every 15 minutes, and they didn't. And I know they didn't, because there was other times, they would, like, a staff member would come out and ask, oh, where is B? Where is B? Mm-hmm. And it's like, y'all are supposed to be watching. I was on level 4 privileges at the time, so I had 1 hour off grounds, no staff, without supervision privileges, where I could go for a walk. And I was coming back to the ward, and I saw cop car, fire truck, ambulance. And through my experiences with my mom over the years, I knew what that meant, that usually that is probably a suicide attempt. And they were all going very, very slowly.
Mm.
Staff member caught me as I was trying to get back into the unit. Um, and they told me that it was B and that she didn't make it. And we had shared bathrooms, and they swore up and down because they had to call my caseworker, they had to call people's parents. They swore up and down we're all going to get grief counseling. We never got any grief counseling. Instead, a few days after that happened, because she had hung herself in the bathroom, one of the two shared bathrooms on the unit, they threatened to drop my level to level 1 if I didn't shower in that bathroom, because that was my hall bathroom. They took away, she had left her diary for me. They took that away. She had drawn me pictures from previous times. They took that away. A staff member did send me the picture after I was reunified with my mom, because they found it. I did steal back from them. I do still have her behavior report through school. As you take from me, I'm going to take from you.
Exactly.
And the fact that they did not provide that grief support. Like, we all went through something horrific.
And did they have therapists on site?
They do, but they're supposed to use them, but barely ever. It was only mostly psychiatrists of like, okay, what are you doing? Yeah, we'll give you these meds, and not actually talking about things. I never got grief therapy, and to like literally threaten my level. So threaten me allowing to have that time to myself where I'm not in the unit, I'm not being watched, and threaten basically my home visits with my mom, which at the time were overnight visits. And to threaten all of that with, you need to shower in this particular place where your friend just killed themselves, or you are going to be on full, complete lockdown. Like,
That's
people,
insane.
yeah, people don't really, like, I was a traumatized kid when I went in, but I was a more traumatized kid when I left.
And you're only there, excuse me.
And I was
And you were
only
only
there
there
for a
for like
short
9
period.
months, 10 months.
Yeah.
My brother was at Wedgwood. I believe he was there for like 2 years. And I went and I visited him one time after I got adopted. I think that was the last time I saw my brother, actually, before I was an adult and I reunified with him as an adult. My mom, or Debbie Gum, I don't even like calling her my mom, Debbie Gum, brought me
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, she brought me there to visit my brother, but it kind of felt like a warning, like, you could be here. And she kept saying
Yeah.
like, oh, you're so lucky that you're not here, like, don't you, like, look how they have to live. And it scared the fuck out of me. And I just, now hearing about it and hearing about like what they did, like, no wonder my brother is fucked up. Like, my brother is still fucked up to this day. He's in and
Yeah.
out of prison. He's very institutionalized. And this is why I say foster care is not a monolith. When people say, oh, you're a ward of the state, they just assume, oh, you're in a foster home. That was
Yeah.
prison. That was
That,
prison.
and like, I've caught a lot of people, like, they'll be like, oh, my kid is acting out, I'm going to send him to residential. And it's like, you don't understand how bad some of those facilities can
These
be. I
are.
mean,
I
even
was
the
in
US
residential.
government has like
I went to a
reports.
residential place. It was called Mount Carmel Youth Ranch. It was in Powell, Wyoming. It's been shut down like several times for child endangerment and all, and child work, like child worker laws and stuff like that. But it was crazy. Like, what they did to us at that place was insane. Like, you're right. There's like no regulations, but it was nothing. I mean, it was outdoors, and I was dealing with rattlesnakes and having to sleep in the desert and shit. But it was kind of fun.
That's
But
aside from the
it wasn't
rattlesnake
compared.
on the third floor. Like, that's oof.
But would you? It sounds better than Wedgwood. We had horses.
They both sound horrible in different ways. Like, at least we had a bed. It was a
Oh, we didn't.
thin
We
mattress.
didn't.
It was a thin mattress on concrete.
No, we were out here sleeping on the ground, sleeping in tents. We had to build our own fires and shit, and we had to bathe outside. It was bad. It was called the wilderness. You were in the wilderness program, literally, and we had to run 4 miles every morning in cowboy boots.
Oh no, that sounds like torture.
No, it
Like,
really was. It really was. So Val, so you get reunified with your mom. What happens after that?
uh, well, I made not great choices after that too, but I was over 17 at that time. Um, I married a guy, like, I went in with to Wedgwood, already with behavior problems. I left with really severe bulimia.
Mm,
Because you can't control things, like, and that's what most eating disorders are. You have zero control over yourself in Wedgwood. Everything is controlled for you. So that was one way for me to like feel that I still had some sense of control. And my mom had threatened to put me on a feeding tube and back in a mental hospital. So instead, I got married. Like, that was the not great decision. I got unmarried very shortly after.
she said, I
But
got unmarried. She's like, gotta go.
yep, I got married to leave that situation, and because I was also fearful that state would come and take me again. So
Mm,
the easiest way for that to not happen was I married my, at the time he was 21, I'm 17.
wow.
Like, that should have been my red flag.
Mm,
And like, my mom wouldn't sign off of it, but I went and I moved in with him. We waited until like the 2 days after I turned 18 to fully get married. But I was fully living with him just to ensure that I was not going to go back to any sort of facility. I was like, I will not like make it if I do. Um, but and once I moved out, I got a lot closer of a relationship with my mom. She didn't remember a lot of the things that had happened
mhm.
because of her electroconvulsive therapy. And I wasn't gonna remind her. Like, I was like, I'll hold on to all of that trauma and not let you know the type of things, the ways that you did affect us as kids.
Mhm.
But she still ended up committing suicide in August of 2009.
I'm so sorry.
So yeah, thank you. It was a couple weeks after my birthday. I had just turned 20. Um, and like, I miss her every day. But I eventually left the area because I was put in the group homes that were in my area. So, it was where I grew up in Grand Rapids. I was born in Grand Rapids, and there was certain areas of the city I could no longer go to because they would just trigger, um, you know, a panic attack. They would trigger a flashback. They would, like, I couldn't drive down that street where Wedgwood was near. I tried to get a job that was even just somewhat close to it, and I couldn't work there. I couldn't go to Woodfield Mall, which was right by there. Like, I was just like, I moved to Chicago, and then I got back into therapy. I'm doing a lot better, like, mentally now.
Good to
I'm
hear.
still in therapy. We're still doing trauma work. We're still healing on that. I have a son, and he just turned 6, and it's so nice to be able to see him be a child. Like, he is just the most excited kid, and he acts his goofy self all the time, and I'm like, I never got to do that when I was growing up. Like, it was hard from the get-go, and it just stayed hard. And it is nice to see him be able to live and be able to have that childhood and be able to, you know, make mistakes. I loved he repeated to me the other day because he made a mistake at school, and he's like, "Yeah, but you always say mistakes are just opportunities to learn." And I'm like, I love that he's not, beating himself up over it because his parents screamed at him for doing something wrong.
Yeah, right.
And
Right.
it is nice to be able to see that, like,
I
my
love
my
that.
trauma therapy worked out where I did end that cycle for my kid.
I love that.
Yeah. And like, I have cancer right now, and it's in a bad state, and I know he's going through a trauma, but
Mhm.
we make sure that he has support for that trauma. He's always able to talk about those feelings. And so, like, so far it has, we've talked with his doctors, we've talked with professionals. My sister does have a degree in child psychology now and social work. And I've even talked with her about how can we best support him. And, you can't prevent all trauma happening to your kids, because there's some that, it's just like in my situation, I can't prevent me from being sick. It was just the terrible luck of the genetic draw. But we support him in that, and we can see the difference between a child that is like, I can see the difference between me, a child who is traumatized and not getting support, versus him, a child who's going through trauma that is getting that support while he's going through it.
I love that you can recognize that and that you broke that cycle, and that
Yeah.
because that's something that's very important in our families, is to break these generational curses. So we don't affect our next generation, so they can have a fighting chance. Like you said, just be a kid, because that's every kid just deserves to be a kid. So wrapping up, Val, what would you say to a teenager living at Wedgwood right now, or trying to survive any type of treatment or placement or any center like this? What advice or what would you say to them?
One, that it's not your fault, and you need to know that it is not your fault for situations you've been given in life, and people will treat you like it's your fault and act like you're the bad guy. But there was at some point someone who was the adult failed you. And I really hope that they can internalize that it was not their fault. Like, I held on to this trauma and the story in Wedgwood for so long because I blamed myself for being in that situation. Like, I should have been sneakier about, the home situation or something or whatever. But the reality is, you are the child in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You deserved to be protected. You deserve to be treated with dignity, with respect. And, you shouldn't have been failed. So to not internalize, the world treating you terribly, because you are worth it. You are great. And you can do so many great things.
You're right. You're right. Well, Val, I want to thank you so much for sharing as much as you did and opening up. I know this was a little hard for you. We spoke before the show, and you're just so brave. And, it really touches me differently. I speak to a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people about foster care and adoption. But when it's in my home court, like when it's Grand Rapids or
Yeah.
Allegan or Kalamazoo or Detroit, I'm just like, oh my God, I've been
Es-
there. Like it just hits
Especially when you
different.
have that personal connection and you're
Exactly.
like,
And like I'm looking
oh,
at
I
my
know that
brother.
place.
Like my brother is, like I said, I think he's in prison right now. He gets out in like 2 years, but he never got any emotional healing. He never got the therapy, and
They
it's
use
just affected
they
his life
call it
forever.
treatment, but they don't really treat anything. They put me on Cymbalta. I was on it for a month, and it made me almost non-responsive. I've completely lost a month of my life in my memory. I don't remember being on that drug.
That's
And
crazy.
they were just like, oh, well, we'll just up the dose. And I'm like, or you could have considered, maybe I'm not actually depressed. Maybe I've just been through a lot. And some of the staff get very objectifying. I think I was there for a month when a staff member had told me, like, we were coming back from a store outing. I think we were coming back from like Target. And she just turns over to me because she had read my CPS file. And she's like, you should write a book on your life because it would be so interesting to see what you've been through. And I'm like,
That's
that's a little
weird.
objectifying to me. Like, you're like,
People have said that about me before I actually wrote my book. People, when I told my story, they were like, "Oh my God, you should write a book." And like, actually, like now that you say it like that, I was like, that is kind of a little objectifying. But I did go ahead and write
it's
a book though.
yeah, no, and
But that's a little
I've bought
objectifying.
your book. I'm working my way through it. It is hard
Oh,
for me to
it's
work my
you
way
can.
through it.
I tell people, some people read it through like uh my favorite person on TikTok, Mama Todd, Ophelia. She and
Yeah.
I are like close friends now. We have personal phone numbers. I got phone numbers of big TikTokers now, y'all. I'm
Yeah.
making it. But I sent her a copy of my book and she read the book, and she actually has a podcast called Talk Talks. And she talked about it on her last episode. Definitely go check that out, y'all. But she read the book in one day, she said, and I was like, how it took me
That
for
is,
my audiobook just came out, and that audiobook took me like 4 or 5 days to read the audiobook
yeah,
because I could only take it in like 2 chapter segments because I was, even though it's a small book, it's not like it's long,
yeah.
it's just heavy, and I didn't leave out anything. And
I, it
if you
is
have
very,
trauma,
it is a
it's
very
hard.
heavy book. Like me and my therapist do also discuss things but I bought it. I am reading through it, and it is also really hard because I watch your TikToks. I love the advocacy and the content that you put out.
Mhm.
And it's so hard to see you and to read like what happened to you. And my heart breaks for you. Like I cry, it might be the chemo. I get very emotional.
Oh wait, hey, we cry on this show sometimes,
But
but
like
no,
like it breaks my heart for you because you are such a kind, caring, sweet person. And
I
nobody
try to
deserves to
be.
go through that. Well,
I
you
try
are
to
when
be.
people deserve it.
I really do try to be, but then also like there's this part of me that I've just been burnt so many times. It's hard for me to trust people.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. That's why I don't really do like even like this whole TikTok beef or community beef. I can't. I'm not part of any groups. Everyone's always inviting me. I'm down. I've been burned so many times, and if you read my book, you will start to understand. But I'm also very blessed, and even though I've been through some shitty situations in life, I got out and I survived, and I
Yes.
have a beautiful life. Like everything that I've ever dreamed of is now happening for me. And I I
Oh.
I talk to kids about that all the time. Like, girl, if you just knew, I know it's dark, but that's why I always say, always shine your light. And
And
a lot of people don't know why I say that. And the reason I say it is not like, oh, don't be a star, shine your light. No, always shine your light because even the dimmest of lights can guide someone.
yeah.
Even if you're in a dark hole and it's complete pitch dark and there's just a little beam of light, you're going to follow that light. And that's why you always need to shine, because there are kids in the foster care system, there are kids in these group homes, and they are dark, they are down in the dumps, and they feel alone. And we need to step up and we need to shine for them so they can see, like, I can get out of this, I can survive, it does
Yes.
get better, I can make my own life. And being a realist, like no child should even have to go through that. That's
Yeah.
my goal.
They really shouldn't. But
But let's be real, they're going to have to, and we're going to have to give them some guidance and give them some light to guide them. So always shine y'all's light. Val, I just want to thank you again for being on the
mm,
show with me and
thank you for
sharing your
having me.
story. Did you want to share any of your social media platforms so people can follow you? Or some people do, some people don't. It's totally up to you.
I am just Valeria Curry on TikTok. So VALERIACURRIE. Just all one word. Most of my content is cancer content, just to be aware of that. I am trying to get more comfortable with the idea of sharing my Wedgwoodish story
Hmm.
on there, and I do have one. From where one content that's that's related to being adult child of an adoptee, and but otherwise it's usually cancer care. So I understand that this one not probably be the best.
Hey, you
But
never know. You never
you
know.
never know.
You never know.
Yep.
Intersectionality works in weird ways. But
Yeah, and
thank, thank
we're
you
having a great
again.
time.
No, thank you again for being on the show. And
Thank you for
um,
having me a lot.
I will talk to you, I guess, and I will see you on the TikTok.
Yep.
All
Bye.
right, y'all. Always shine y'all's light, and we will see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.